Greetings troopers, welcome to the Imperial Academy. If you're watching this video then you probably want to know how to pilot an AT-AT Walker, or all-terrain armoured transport. AT-AT Walkers were a great show of strength during the time of the Galactic Civil War, as they would tower above the battlefield seeming practically impenetrable with their shields, striking fear into the hearts of any enemy who faced them, and leading the frontal assault against oncoming fire from the rebel trenches, and would deploy their troops that they would have carried in order to capture objectives, which consisted of rebel bases, outposts, shipyards and more. But first, let's talk a bit more about the AT-AT's history and its attributes. The AT-AT Walkers were developed and built by Quake Drive Yards as a combat class walker used for carrying and protecting troops out in the battlefield. The design commonly included 4 large legs, a troop cabin in the main body, and a cockpit section in the head for the pilots. This design type has been carried over from its predecessors that served during the Clone Wars, the ATTE. The ATTE was the first variant of Walker that was mainly used for war purposes during the time of the Republic, which then was disbanded due to the Tarkin Doctrine coming into effect. That allowed room for the AT-AT to be manufactured by Quake, of which there were several variants that were produced during the Empire's reign. The first variant of AT-AT was featured in Jedi Fallen Order and Star Wars Rebels, and acted as more of a prototype for future Walker variant. It was a lot smaller, standing at only 18 meters, and had thinner legs and a larger visor for the pilots to look out of, and the front cannons were in a ball joint, which allowed for more degrees of movement and aiming, but they were generally more vulnerable to being destroyed. These walkers were used for patrols and reconnaissance, guarding Imperial outposts along with AT-STs and taking out small bases or small bands of fighters as they were easier to deploy, but it was generally quite rare to see them in the front lines due to their lack of sufficient firepower needed to take on speeders and fighters. Later developed though was the AT-AT Walker variant we all know from Empire Strikes Back, that was suited for larger operations such as planetary invasion, holding defences from enemy attack, carrying troops and vehicles long distances, and leading a frontal assault due to their shields which could not be pierced by blaster fire or explosives, instead having to be disabled via ion weaponry so that damage can be dealt. These walkers famously served during the Battle of Hoth, where they had to knock out a shield generator and storm the rebel base. They were also later present on Endor, helping to assert Imperial authority and infrastructure on the moon. They had a smaller visor, so there was less visibility, and had 2 front cannons which were built in, so it was required to move the entire head in order to aim and fire, which I suppose you could say was quite a disadvantage when it came to fighting, but one could always get a lucky shot if they were careful. There were 2 side cannons on either side of the head, for firing at infantry and small vehicles. They are much taller than their earlier models. At 25 meters they tower over the battlefield and are especially devastating in coordinated groups. Another variant that the Empire used were AT-ACTs, or all-terrain armoured cargo transports, which, as the name suggests, were used for carrying cargo to outposts, cities, towns, bases, and also helped with construction efforts of stations and ships used by the Empire. They stood at 31 meters tall and had 2 guns on either side of their heads and no front cannon, which made them less versatile than other variants, but they still managed to hold off on their own due to their shield, which were actually similar in strength to AT-AT shields, as seen in Rogue One, where they were involved in the Battle of Scarif, where they assisted stormtroopers in holding a defence against the rebel attack and were shown to be resistant to heavy explosives thanks to their shield. They had a removable cargo compartment, which made them very good at transporting Imperial goods and having quick turnaround times when going from one point to another, and also helped with the deployment of stormtroopers in order to take control of the planet, mainly in the Outer Rim, where there wasn't much offense, so these walkers were generally safe doing things there. The pilots were chosen from the Trooper Corps, and were chosen from troopers who displayed the best combat ability and survival ability out in the field, being able to adapt and think critically about any situation that they might be in. These pilots were then taken and trained to use not just AT-ATs but AT-STs and many of the other walkers within the Empire's arsenal, which gave them a boost in survivability in the field, as they were now basically piloting a walking fortress, and this also gained him much more respect from the lower ranks. The AT-AT pilot's suit was designed to keep the pilot safe in the event of an emergency, and to protect him against the elements such as cold and heat in the event of a climate control failure within the walker. With very minimal armour plating, the suit was manufactured with the pilot's comfort in mind, as they would be mostly spending their time inside the cockpit of an AT-AT, or any walker for that matter. The suits were made of a nylon-like material and with loose fitting similar to that of a starfighter pilot's suit, and had a helmet with two pipes connecting to a life support pack on their chest, which provided them with oxygen and many of the other basic necessities needed to stay alive. They also came equipped with thermal detonators and a blaster in case of any ground encounters. So overall, the pilot's suit was a versatile piece of equipment which was effective at protecting its wearer in many different situations compared to, say, traditional stormtrooper armour, which is only really very effective at combat. Now, piloting an AT-AT was no simple task, as the drivers had to account for many different factors when using a walker, such as situational awareness around the vehicle, the walker's condition such as shield strength, hull integrity, cargo condition and firepower. They also needed to keep track of the walker's distance to a target, so that when the time is right, the objective given can be completed without having to lose a walker, which is why every walker had two pilots in order to cope with the many variables that come with piloting one of these machines in an active battlefield. Some even had generals like Maximilian Beers, for example, who would give instructions to the pilot about where to go and what to do, what targets to shoot and where the objective is. Currently there are not any official ways designated to control an AT-AT. What I talk about in this next point is my best guess as to how one was probably controlled, so take it with a grain of salt. An AT-AT was controlled via a main control panel in the middle of the cockpit. Attached to it were two levers which controlled the walking speed and rhythm of the leg movement, and head movement, and aiming of the gun, and firing of the gun. The pilot on the right controlled the walking, and the pilot on the left controlled the head movements and frontal cannon, and was the one responsible for firing at enemies and taking out targets. Along the dash there were plenty of other knobs and buttons which were responsible for many things such as climate control, autopilot, automatic targeting, shield strength, fire rate, side doors, back doors, troop deployment alarm, engine condition, and much, much more. All walkers came equipped with periscope to see far off into the distance and track targets on the ground or in the air. They also came equipped with a holomap to map out terrain that the walker will traverse on, so the pilots could plan their journey ahead and make correct orientation to ensure that the walker is best suited for its mission ahead of time. One glaring weakness that walkers faced was their ability to be tripped up by speeders, as seen during the Battle of Hoth, where rebel snowspeeders and Luke Skywalker wrapped the legs of the walker using a cable and tripping it up. This was devastating for any walker, as they were not able to get back up under their own power, and trying to recover a downed walker was a waste of time and resources for the Empire. And that is a reminder to any AT-AT pilot out there that an AT-AT is really only as good as its pilot, so get moving, we got rebels to crush. Thanks for watching. We hope you learned new information about the Empire and its walkers today. Do you think you have what it takes to pilot a walker for the Empire? If so, then let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want more vehicle guides and Empire videos, and don't forget to check out my previous video on the monsters that exist within the Star Wars galaxy. But until then, stay tuned for more coming up on the Imperial Academy to help you prepare for your time in the field and be able to crush the rebel scum.